I think the pretrial system is faulty. Not everybody that goes to the pretrial system is treated fairly. Financially, personally, just mentally. I think it needs to be reevaluated completely.
The legislature connected with our organization and essentially said, we are at a point in our state where we realize the problems with this current system. Tell us what to do. So this project is really to redesign our pretrial system in Minnesota.
The idea is really to have a sense of what the best practices are across the country, what's already happening in Minnesota, and to get the voices of community members and system actors involved so that our policy recommendations are shaped by as many informed voices as possible.
Our hope is to dig into how community thinks about pretrial. What are the assumptions or stories about pretrial? And then what might possibility be? And then take all that information and make some really good recommendations to the state, and from there, hopefully shift the way that it currently functions.
Hey, there's food too. Are you filming me filling my plate? You just watch me skip over the vegetables even?
How's everybody doing? Good. How you doing, bro? All right. So there are a lot of folks that are anxious to be able to tell their story about how they went through this process and how it affected them.
A huge part of this project will be going into community centers. We're setting up these different conversations, what we call community engagement sessions across the state, in particular people who have experience with the pretrial system.
I think we design our community engagement sessions really intentionally. There's some space for some, large group learning, and there's some space for small group work where you get to sort of connect with neighbors.
And then we create spaces for dreaming, for critical inquiry, to be like, why is it this way? And how could it be? And what would have been better for you when you experienced this process?
You're walking in with no advocacy. You don't know anything about the courts just because somebody out there claimed you did something, and now you're brought into the system. What do you do? Where's your resources? Who's guiding you through that? So that's what I'm saying. There needs to be more advocacy on behalf of both parties.
So did I capture what you're saying, right? So this idea of sort of someone that can provide education about the process, what's going to happen, knowledge about what,
Pretrial really encompasses all of the things that happen sort of, post-arrest, post-charge, pre-adjudication.
When we're thinking about pretrial, we're thinking about cash bail, but we're also thinking about people who are in pretrial detention and what the jails are like for them. We're thinking about conditions of release, so things like electronic home monitoring, drug testing.
Right now, when we think about the point or the sort of stated goals of a pretrial system, it is to ensure appearance at court and ensuring safety of community members.
I think that pretrial, like a lot of our current criminal legal system, has caused a lot of harm. And there's also a lot of misinformation and discrepancy about what it is supposed to do and what the actual impact of the system is.
To put it simply, the current way we do pretrial in Minnesota is unconstitutional. In Minnesota, all offenses are bailable, which means in any case, in every case, a person has the right to be released pretrial as long as they can meet certain conditions of release. The problem is that one of the conditions of release that we use is cash bail. And if you can't pay the cash bail, if you can't afford it, then you can't be released.
Plenty of people are held in jail simply because they cannot afford to post bail. At the same time, those who may pose a real risk to themselves or others may be released simply because they can afford to get out of jail.
We have to create a pretrial system that is founded, actually built on, and designed around a presumption of innocence. We have to consider if these people are presumed innocent, how do we actually think about them? And how do we treat them as humans in this process?
So I think the whole system likely needs to transform, but I think a good first step would be to get really curious about, does the current system align with our values? And if not, where and how might we shift those? And two, does access or adjacency to wealth really mean you are more or less safe?
I'd say it's really inequitable. So I personally was held on pretrial, and I was released within 24 hours. I believe it's just mostly because of my skin tone and my class, and if I wasn't in the situation I was in, I could have lost my job. I could have lost, not been able to pay rent. I was in school at the time too. I had a test the next day. I wouldn't be able to take that test.
People are sitting there days and days and months, with nothing to do, nowhere to go. It's hard to get a job when you don't know what your end date is. You can't take advantage of programs.
What does involvement in this system that we have cost people, such as mental health, jobs, financial losses?
You want my answer as far as being incarcerated and what does it do to your mental health? And,
yeah, if you're willing to share.
Well, there's always that losing time with your children, and missing out on all that experiences of them growing and birthdays and holidays. So you kind of lose that bond. Not only does it affect your mental health, but also theirs. There's a period of time where my kids won't even talk to me. I've lost so many things. My whole house, cars.
And did you miss out on any of the things in pretrial when you were waiting for the court?
Yeah, I sure did. Several times.
The community engagement sessions also serve to identify specific stories that can really be evocative of what's happening in the pretrial system.
Stories are data, and so what we do is we try to really collect that data in a really thoughtful way. So don't just hold space for people to talk about their trauma, but actually create space for people to be generative.
Narratives are powerful, and community will have various stories about pretrial and about bail. Our work is to really understand that these conversations are not binary. It's not an academic exercise. It's an embodied experience for some of our community, and I think those sessions allows us to remember that.
If you heal a person and you heal their situation, they're not going to repeat it. Mm-hmm. It's just like a kid. When you were a kid, your mother said stop. Once you learn the consequences behind it, what did you do? You stopped doing it. It didn't necessarily mean a spanking or punishment. It was just her explaining to you, I don't want you to do this because it's not safe. You should eat all your food because I don't want you to get sick. Those things is healing. Those things are reform that stopped you from doing it. The problem with the justice system is we say in this country we reform, we heal, but we actually don't.
Research is almost always done without really centering community perspectives. As an organization, the Minnesota Justice Research Center, this is where we start our work always.
We want community to feel really in charge and really empowered. Folks, again, who sit in positions of power in relationship to pretrial work, often those are not the same folks that are the most impacted by pretrial.
A lot of people don't have access to capital that can bail out, and you're sitting in jail for something petty and you lose a lot of stuff because you can't afford to bail out. I was a formerly incarcerated individual, so a lot of these issues affected me and my family, so we have to work to undo them and work together as people to build better communities.
We really operate this organization on the premise that those closest to the problem are often closest to the solutions. This is not a new idea. We are not alone in believing this. But by letting that guide our work, we have to then stay deeply connected with those closest to the issues.
The beauty, I think, for community members is to come out, and as you hear other folks start to dream, it can be really generative that way. And so my hope is that folks come out and, sort of lean into their curiosity and into one another.
So I think it's really important that you know that coming here tonight, spending your time with us, your valuable time and energy, emotional energy, is not wasted. We are using what you've shared with us to help shape our recommendations, and that's going to shape policy here in Minnesota. So it really does matter, and I can't thank you enough for being here.
Everything stuck with me. So I think it was just good to be there, here, and a part of this.
Yeah, we're gonna see tonight. I'm meeting with meetings tomorrow.